This is Michele Jaco, host of the Inside the Chapters podcast for the novel When I See the Wolf Ride. And here's a recap of what happened in Chapter 10 of Book 1. Devastated by the sight of Viet Cong soldiers in front of the orphanage huts, Lee jumps off the log and swims to the shore to get a better look. He sees Mama T bringing them food, which gives him hope that everyone there is still alive. After some reconnaissance, he discovers there are 2 Viet Cong camps of soldiers within just a few miles of each other. So far, the soldiers have just taken food from Mama T, but he's terrified that one of the Viet Cong camps might return to kill them all. And now, on top of all that, a big storm is coming. He feels he can't take the chance that the Viet Cong camps will leave the orphanage alone, so he devises a daring plan. In the middle of the storm, he attacks one camp, stealing a truck with some weapons, including a bazooka. The soldiers in that camp take chase, even though it's impossible to see in the blinding storm. Lee then attacks the other camp, and those soldiers give chase. Racing back toward the soldiers pursuing him from the first camp, as he encounters their vehicles, he swerves out of the way, and the vehicles from the second camp run into the ones from the first camp. Since they are blinded by the storm, they all start shooting at each other. Lee manages to escape to the orphanage and convinces Mama T to get the children in the truck to try and escape. But after a few minutes, the truck is stuck at a washed-out road, and they know the Viet Cong will be coming for them in minutes. Lee takes the bazooka and a couple of rifles, heading back in their direction, knowing he has little chance of outgunning them or even surviving. When they reach him, he is cut down by their gunfire before he can fire off a shot. But then he encounters something he can't believe. The Cherokee warrior that Wolf had said was a legend appears in front of him, picking up the bazooka and the rifles. He has Wolf's face. He blows up the approaching truck, telling Lee he was never there. Lee falls in and out of consciousness. He sees his mom, the Cherokee warrior, and Dung. He feels he must be dead. But then...
Did the kids make it? Then Dung came up to me, right in my face. Captain Avigdor's little girl was behind him, both of them smiling. I started to weep. If they were here, I had failed.
You back! You save us, Dad! You save everybody!
Behind him, I could see Mama T, Captain Avigdor, Art, Hershey, and the other children. Mom and the Cherokee warrior were standing there too. Mom gave me the sweetest smile.
You'll see God. You'll see him for the rest of your life, if you look.
With that, she walked away. I noticed a bag of clear liquid hanging from a metal rod with a plastic tube feeding into my arm. The Cherokee warrior whispered something into Dung's ear, then looked me over, gave me a nod of approval, and walked away. Captain Avigdor came to my side, putting his arms around his daughter and Dung.
We thought we'd lost you.
Now I understood my surroundings. We were in a large aircraft. That's why it felt unstable and moving. We were in the air. I was on a medical cot.
Everyone made it out alive because of you. All the children. And Dung told me how you made him promise to protect my little girl.
I was trying to speak, but my voice wasn't there. I finally strained out the words.
Where are we going?
The captain smiled, putting his hand on my shoulder.
We're going home.
Welcome to the audio production of the novel When I See the Wolf Ride, Book 1, Chapter 11. Copyright 2024 by Jeffrey Lee Neal. Read by the author with Michele Jaco reading the part of Elizabeth. And now, here is Chapter 11 of When I See the Wolf Ride, Book 1.
Chapter 11. Treasure in the Ruins. From the Bible. He is a father to the fatherless and an advocate for widows. God rules from his holy dwelling place. God settles in their own homes those who have been deserted. Psalm 68, verses 5 through 6. During the next 3 weeks, I laid in a hospital bed. Instead of going to Germany or some other base, Captain Avigdor had enough pull to get us all flown back to Texas. The room was small, but I could see glimpses of the evening sunsets in the Fort Worth, Texas VA facility. My wounds were painful, though no longer life-threatening. I had a couple of broken bones, and I had taken hits in both shoulders, my right leg, and my head. Recuperation was boredom. So I wrote everything down as clear as I could remember it. After I started making myself do it, writing in this journal became my emotional release. The first visitor I remember in the hospital was Captain Avigdor. I still didn't fully understand what happened in Vietnam with Bosner, the fake colonel, and Zapp. I could tell the captain felt bad for me, staring at my broken body.
You deserve an explanation of what happened. You've earned it.
The captain explained the colonel was actually Andrei Gorkin, a Russian mobster. He fled for his life from Russia to America after he embezzled money from the wrong people in Russia. His connections in the United States allowed him and his son to become part of a lobbying group in Washington. They made powerful friends in Congress. His son pitched an idea to one of them, Congressman William Brown of Texas. The idea? Make the press report more enemy casualties every night on the news, with images created from a secret special task force. Brown hated the way our troops were treated by the press and the public. He became convinced that this might turn the tide for Americans that actually wanted to win in Vietnam rather than just run from it. The special force would work its way deep into the enemy's ranks, taking out top leaders. In a few months, Walter Cronkite would have to report massive U.S. victories and enemy casualties on the evening news instead of the nightly American death toll. Only a handful of people in the military were let in on the secret project. A CIA operative, the real Colonel Reeves, was recruited to head the project. Soon after, it was assumed he was murdered by the Gorkins, with Andrei assuming his identity. Gorkin handpicked Bosner because of his reputation for being a ruthless hothead. He ordered him to get convicted murderers to work under him and to kill as many gooks as possible. Now that Gorkin was heading a secret operation as a diversion, he could come and go through security at will. He would infiltrate the Da Nang Air Base, plant bombs, and destroy it. America would run from the Vietnam War in defeat, and Gorkin would return to Russia a hero. Other leaders in Washington saw some of the images and wanted to know what was really going on, so they sent Captain Avigdor to investigate. Gorkin had been tipped off about Captain Avigdor, and when Bosner died, he knew he had to accelerate his plans. The captain stopped his story for a moment, staring out the window as if he could see his memories somewhere out there in the distance.
They didn't tell me everything. I didn't even know Gorkin's name. I was under orders not to interfere with anything Bosner did, only to observe. The mission was to locate and identify the man he was working under.
This tough sniper started getting emotional.
I watched them do things. Terrible things. When they took on that coward Burns, Bosner made him shoot people they knew weren't Viet Cong. Women, even children. Villages, old people, carnage. I did nothing to stop them because I was under orders.
Tears ran down his face. He was watching it all again as he stared into the window.
They attracted starving people with food and candy the way you would with animals. There would be rapes, beatings, killings. They usually burned the evidence after they left. And then Bosner took you guys. I could tell you didn't know what he had planned. He took your guys as prisoners because your Sarge wouldn't go along. And then he put a gun to your head.
Captain Avigdor turned and looked right at me.
A man can only take so much.
So, you violated your orders to save my life? Captain Avigdor smiled.
It was either him or you, and the Cap didn't like him.
It was the cheerful, deep tones of Hershey's voice coming from the door with Art. They jaunted in, laughing.
You look like you're healing up.
I still had questions about what happened in the cave. Art, how did you get a grenade in that cave? And how did you get your hands loose after they tied us up?
I am magical.
Captain Avigdor and Hershey laughed out loud. Art continued.
My family from the circus in Italy taught me to steal and hide objects. The big Russian threw me on my own bag. A poor decision.
But they tied your hands. Art laughed and started moving his wrists in impossible ways.
My family is double-jointed. No one ties these hands.
Art had hidden the grenade behind him, pretending to still have his hands tied. I couldn't stop thinking about it. So, what happened when we were on the river? Captain Avigdor smiled.
As the storm dissipated, Art flew us in a helicopter to try and find you. We found you half dead in front of a burning truck with a bazooka and the rifle at your side.
Hershey interrupted, finishing the captain's sentence.
As if somebody laid him there.
Congressman Brown was briefed by Captain Avigdor on everything that had happened and how his zeal for victory had almost cost our nation a terrible defeat. The truth devastated William Brown. He was willing to do virtually anything to make it right. So, Congressman Brown made special arrangements to take care of us all. No stops at facilities overseas or in Germany. They flew us all to Texas. Mama T, Lee, and the children would have a fast track to American citizenship. They were placed with a loving Catholic community at Mount Carmel in Dallas. The nuns there welcomed them and made sure they had nourishment, housing, clothing, schooling, and most of all, love. 2 weeks later, on the day I was to be released, Captain Avigdor closed the door behind him, making sure we were alone.
You've had a remarkable recovery, but you do realize we can never talk about any of these things that happened. None of this can ever get out.
I hadn't told him about my writing project, and now I never would. I understand, sir. Then he lost his smile.
That's good, because there was one thing we couldn't fix.
Sir? Captain Avigdor sighed.
Lee Dunham was killed in action. You're still dead.
So, what exactly does that mean, sir? Captain Avigdor smiled.
It means they don't want anybody asking you about what happened in Vietnam, so you'll need a new name and identity before we sign you out of here. Your new name will be Lawrence Raymond Neal. What do you think?
Do I have a choice? The captain thought about it for a few seconds and then said,
Yeah, we can change it.
How about this? Coit L. Neal. Coit with a Y, and make the name Neal with 2 L's.
Coit with a Y. Never heard it spelled that way.
I got a little emotional. I've only known one man with that name, my dad, and his father's name was Neal. It would allow me to hold on to some of my identity and still follow the order. The captain rubbed his chin as he considered it. It would mean more paperwork.
What will the L stand for?
This request might be harder, but I was on a roll. Lee. Can I have it stand for Lee? Captain Avigdor smiled.
Yeah, I suppose so. You can keep that part of your former name as long as you go by Coit.
I grinned. Call me Coit, sir. The captain nodded.
Okay. Your papers will include a birth certificate that certifies Dung is your son.
Wait, what? The captain kept going in a monotone, matter-of-fact way, like this had already been decided.
Dung has been asking for his dad. Mama T's been telling him you need to recuperate, but that you're getting out today.
Jesus, I like the kid, but I told him what he needed to hear to survive. The captain sighed.
You made him a promise, Lee. I heard it, he heard it, and more importantly, he believes it.
Cap, I'm only 19. I got my whole life ahead of me, a life I almost didn't get back. I want a chance to enjoy nightlife, to look into the eyes of a beautiful woman.
And you believe you can't do that if you're babysitting the kid?
Well, yeah. The captain stood up.
Then you're going to have to tell him, Lee, Coit. Ain't going to be easy.
I sighed as I started getting dressed. I'll have to figure out what to say. I guess I'll go over there next week. That's when the door opened. It was Hershey, Art, Mama T, the captain's daughter, Crystal, and Dung, who ran into the room, hugging me as hard as he could, yelling, The others cheered and clapped as he ran to me. He looked like a different kid. New clothes, his face washed, and no odor. I smiled, pushing him back to look at him. Dung? I've never seen you so clean. There was laughter from the others as he hugged me again. I didn't have the heart to tell him he had no father, at least not right now. Then he let go of me and became serious.
Dad!
I nodded to let him know I was listening to him.
Mr. Wolf told me. Give you this.
And then my new son slipped Wolf's small circular amulet, Ari-1 Hickory, the sign of the Wolf clan, into my palm. I was astonished. Everyone in the room seemed stunned. After a moment, I had an idea. I'd like to see if I could borrow a car. I need to return this to its rightful owners, Wolf's family. He told me they lived in Durant. Mama T, if it's okay, could I take Dung with me? I owed that to my brother, and, alone on a trip, I was hoping to make things right with Dung. So 2 days later, Dung and I were in the captain's truck on US 75. Destination, Durant, Oklahoma. Dung was wearing a brand new Dallas Cowboys t-shirt. He had no idea who or what the Dallas Cowboys were, but he loved the shirt. He didn't say a lot. He simply took it all in, like a family dog, mesmerized by the passing wonders. We went through Van Alstyne. It hadn't changed much since I was away, but I had. I resisted the temptation to stop. Lee Dunham was dead now. As we moved on north, I brought up something with Dung I had been putting off. How do you like America? His eyes got big as he answered.
It's big. It's beautiful. It's great, Dad.
It's your home now. You're an American. You know that I changed my name when I came back to America, don't you? He nodded. Well, I think we should change your name, too.
You not like Dung now?
That is your Vietnamese name. Wouldn't you like to have an American name?
Is there one as good as Dung?
I tried not to smile. He was serious. You know, in America, sometimes we use letters as names. How would you feel about being called DJ? He thought for a moment.
I like.
Considering it more, now he grinned.
Dung is DJ.
He stuck his head out the window and yelled.
Dung now DJ. Dung now DJ.
He kept yelling it until we reached the Red River. The Red River Bridge astounded him. America was overwhelming. Highway 75 into Durant narrowed into a blacktop road. The houses were smaller now, as if we had not only passed into another state, but another time. Our destination was about 5 miles north of Durant, the boyhood home of Wea Jones. I had called his parents, asking to come by and meet them. We drove up to the little farmhouse nestled quietly on a few grassy acres. It was a small, older, one-story structure, partially rock, partially wood. It looked like a country scene in the wilderness from an oil painting, a rustic retreat that felt like home the moment you saw it. It would have looked like any other farmhouse, but for the large cross on the door.
Look, Dad. A cross.
I nodded.
This it. Mama T say, always go to the cross.
As we were driving up, a man and a woman with round faces and graying hair eagerly rushed out to meet us. As soon as I could open the car door, the lady, wearing a tan skirt with a white baggy blouse, ran to embrace me. A total stranger she had never met. As she let me go from her embrace, her husband, beaming at the very sight of me, grabbed my hand and then couldn't stop himself from hugging me. Grizzled skin, yellowing teeth, and an emotional smile welcomed me. Neither of them was taller than 5 feet. Wearing the same earth colors and standing together, they resembled matching cherubs. They seemed near tears. After hugging me, each of them hugged DJ as if he were a cherished grandson. I spoke, feeling awkward. It's very nice to meet you both, and this is DJ.
We know.
Her husband finished her sentence.
And it honors us to have you visit our home.
As they walked us in, I could have sworn the interior was larger than what could be fit in the little house. It was mostly wood, with homemade furniture resting naturally among so many Cherokee artifacts I could have mistaken it for a museum. There were photos, dolls, figurines, and paraphernalia covering the walls and tables, as well as some chairs. On the wall was a wood plaque with a Cherokee blessing. May the warm winds of heaven blow softly on your home, and the Great Spirit bless all who enter. May your moccasins make happy tracks in many snows, and may the rainbow always touch your shoulder. We were seated on the nicest couch in the room, with these two senior citizens sitting quickly across from us, still smiling, staring at us. Again, I broke the silence. I wanted to meet you because your son was like a brother to me. You were brothers. The man stopped her in mid-sentence.
I am Henry Jones, and this is Anna.
And then he broke into a broader smile.
But we would like you to call us by our Cherokee names. I am Degataga, and this is Awanasa.
The old man smiled at his wife.
Lehi is exactly as Wea described him.
He pronounced my name Lehi.
You are family now. There are spiritual things.
He chose his words carefully.
Understand that we are Christians, Christ followers. We both believe in Jesus and know that he is the only way to salvation with God forever. But there are spiritual things among Cherokees. Death is not an ending, but a transition. It is a journey to a better place of honor with our ancestors. It is the very same heaven spoken of by Jesus in the Bible.
I nodded. I understand. I was raised as a Christian and we believe in the afterlife. He smiled.
You don't understand. You believe, but I see.
I must have looked stunned.
The Bible tells us it was by the power of the Holy Spirit that Jesus performed his miracles. The Apostle Paul tells us the Holy Spirit gives us spiritual gifts. One of mine is visual. I saw you and Wea become brothers in the truck. I watched you after the moment of the gunshot that took his earth life. I saw you risk your own life to save those children. I watched your bravery, your spirit, your honor.
I was dumbfounded.
I know it is hard for you to grasp spiritual things.
I nodded.
Very few of us are given the ability of this spiritual vision. Awanasa cannot see these things as I can. For years, she did not believe me when I told her.
He grabbed her hand, as if by instinct.
When I told her the things I could see, people from the other side, spiritual things.
She nodded as he continued.
There are those that feel nothing unusual and see nothing beyond the physical. There are others like you and me. God calls us all. I believe God destined us to be a family. We will take your mother's place for you, if you will let us, and you will take Wea's place for us.
I was overwhelmed with emotion, automatically getting up to embrace both of these old wrinkled souls who only moments earlier were total strangers to me. For the next 2 hours, we shared food, fellowship, and absolute joy, far more than I ever had with any of my real family. I could tell that DJ loved them as much as I did. It was amazing. Instant, loving family. It was as if I had known these people all my life. And then I remembered why I had come here. I almost forgot. I came here to give Wea's amulet back to you. Awanasa beamed like an angel when I gave it to her. She showed it to Degataga, who had to slip on his reading glasses to see it clearly. He smiled, and then she handed it back to me.
It does not belong to us. It was a gift from Wea's fiancé.
He told me about her. Elizabeth, I believe, correct? Degataga nodded.
Elizabeth Mitchell, you should take this to her. She would treasure it.
Where is she? How do I find her? Awanasa beamed again, as if we were speaking of her own daughter.
Fort Washita. She works at Fort Washita.
I had no idea the U.S. had a military base near Durant. Degataga stood up, taking a handcrafted arrow from a shelf.
While you are gone, I could teach this boy the correct way to use a bow and arrow. We will construct one for him.
DJ, want that? Dad, can I, Dad? Can I, Dad? Can I?
I looked back at them, trying to make sure they were sincere. You don't mind? Awanasa got out of her chair and hugged DJ again.
Today, the Creator has given us a new son and grandson. We cherish these moments. Go to Elizabeth. Wea would want that.
Degataga nodded his approval. It was settled. It was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon when I set out on a rural back road to find Fort Washita. After a half hour of driving through acres of grassy fields, the trees became denser, and finally, on the right-hand side of the road, there it was. In front of me were the remains of what had been a fort long ago. A dirt road and a weathered sign marked the entrance to Fort Washita, constructed on the muddy red Washita River a few hundred feet west. The dirt road that ran to the river split to snake its way between 3 or 4 crumbling limestone walls nestled in tall grass. Ahead of me was an old cemetery and one small, modern building. The historical marker in front of it claimed the fort was built to protect the Choctaw Indians. I was skeptical of that. There were no other cars here in this lonely, desolate place. I made my way up the 3 wooden steps to the glass door, and before I opened it, I saw her. This had to be Elizabeth. To me, this woman's face reflected an angelic purity, with long brown hair that softly fell over her shoulders like a waterfall. She wore a modest blue dress that would have made anyone else look more ordinary, but its simplicity enhanced her, amplifying her stunning beauty like a spotlight. She was quietly arranging some artifacts in a glass case. And then she saw me. Instead of being surprised at a strange man staring through the door, she smiled and motioned me to come in. As I entered the small room covered with maps and general information about the area, all I could really see was her.
Welcome to the Information Center for Fort Washita. Are you a first-time visitor?
I nodded, awkwardly, like one of those toy birds that dips its head in a glass of water repeatedly. Yes, ma'am. That was all I could get out of my mouth. The closer I got to her, the more intimidatingly lovely she was.
Well, I have pamphlets about the ruins and some artifacts here. The Historical Society has plans for renovating this area. Are you interested in history?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Well, then you'll find Fort Washita fascinating.
I'm sure I will, but...
But?
She looked at me funny. But I'm not here for history, ma'am. I'm here to see you. Her smile vanished. Degataga and Awanasa told me where to find you. I served in the army with Wea. Now, emotion rushed through her face. She hurried to the glass door, reversed the paper sign to say closed, and turned back to me. Glowing.
Are you Leahy?
Yes, but that's kind of complicated. She interrupted, motioning to the door.
It's cool outside. I want you to tell me all about yourself, and tell me about Wea.
She led me out to the cemetery only a few yards away. There were crumbling old gravestones here, dating back to the 1800s, resting under the tallest trees in the compound. In the dark, this could have been a setting for my nightmares. But in this moment, as the afternoon sun cast pools of light across the grass and the rock, it was a garden of serenity and peace. We sat on a small, rugged wooden bench surrounded by tombstones. I lost myself staring at her. She couldn't help but notice my fascination.
What? Why are you staring at me?
It was one of those humiliating moments, like when you're in a job interview talking about your attributes to a prospective boss, and you both realize your fly has been open the whole time. Wea, described how your brown hair would catch red hues when the sunlight hit it, like it is now. Then she stared at me. Was I getting too weird? Might as well finish the thought. You're exactly as he described you. I was sincere. She really was. She smiled sheepishly.
What was it like? What was it like over there?
It was hell. Poverty, violence, and death. To be honest, I saw too many things I don't even want to remember. However, I'll never forget Wolf. We became brothers.
I know. His parents told me. Share everything you can.
I'm not supposed to say anything about it, but I have this feeling Wolf brought me to you, that he wanted you to know. I have to have your promise that you will tell no one what I'm about to share. We could both go to prison for it. She put her hand on mine.
I can keep a secret, and you look like you need to share one.
So I let it all spill. How I was drafted after my mother died, how I hated everybody, including Wolf, how Bosner was ready to kill me, and the captain saved my life, how we worked together to find who was behind all of it, how Wolf and I became brothers, how we were captured. I cried as I described his death. I couldn't save him. I would have given my life, but all I could do was watch. I broke down, and she nestled my head in her arms, speaking to me softly.
When that lieutenant colonel put a gun to your head, Weah couldn't do anything to stop it either. No one escapes moments of being powerless.
I got myself back together and told her the rest, everything, including how the Cherokee warrior had Wolf's face and how he made it look like I defeated a truck full of Viet Cong. I'm no hero. I don't know how it all happened, but I know I didn't save them. Wolf did. She smiled at me sympathetically. And here's the kicker. Lee Dunham is dead. The Army report is that he was killed in action with Wolf. You can't ever call me by my real name. I'm Coit Neal now. She smiled and put out her hand to shake mine.
Well, Coit Neal, I'm delighted to meet you. But I think I like your Cherokee name, Leahy, better.
Instead of shaking her hand, I took the amulet out, gently placing it in her palm. This is why I came. I tried to give this to Wolf's parents, but they said I should give it to you. She became emotional now as she studied it like a long-lost treasure.
I gave this to Weah as a sign of our love.
I know Wolf wanted it to come back home to you.
Thank you.
She hugged me. I didn't know how to react to that. We said nothing for the next few moments. Too emotional. Finally, I stood up. I should probably get back. We had been sitting there talking for over 2 hours. She wiped the tears from her face and smiled.
I understand.
It was as if she didn't want me to leave, even though I was a stranger.
Leahy, I'll walk you back to your car.
As she stood up, I looked back at the wooden building among the ruins. This seems like one of the loneliest jobs in the world. She smiled and took my hand.
It wasn't today.
We were at the car now. I lost track of time, just staring at her. It was wonderful to meet you. I understand now how Weah treasured you. She was staring back at me as I opened the car door, and then...
Come back.
She put her hand over her mouth after the outburst, as if she had burped or something. I stopped. Maybe I smiled. A little.
I mean, come back tomorrow. I'd like to meet DJ.
I will. Now, I really smiled. I hadn't planned to stay this long, but that was a request I couldn't turn down.
That concludes Chapter 11. We invite you next to read the PDF or listen to Chapter 12, entitled The Final Blessing. We also invite you to listen to our podcast for Chapter 11, in which Michele Jaco talks with Jeff Neal about the story, the characters, and the symbolic elements within the chapter. Music for this production was licensed from the Smart Sound collection, and cover art was created from Adobe stock images. Some voice work was enhanced by AI technology from 11 Labs.